So I'll wait. Um, What's up, family? Listen, I'm so glad that you are here. Listen, welcome to Fresh Fire Church. Again, I'm glad that you're here. I'm Pastor Laron. It's not a mistake. It's no secret. It's not even a coincidence that you stopped, that you paused, that you stumbled right on into our Bible study tonight. I believe that tonight's Bible study, it is just for you. We've been talking in this entire series, and in fact, we've been talking all month on the radical topic of rejection. In fact, all month we have been in our study in our series of what it means to wrestle with rejection. That's where we ought to be, where we aren't responding to rejection in a way that represses who we are, but are we willing to show up in the fight and wrestle with that thing? Wrestle until we get free, until we are able to live in the fullness of that freedom. So listen, again, I am glad that you are here. If that's you, if that speaks to you, I want you to stay. I want you to stick around because I believe that the Lord wants to give you the principles tonight and the practices for you to be able to get free and stay free from rejection. That's where we at. That's what we're doing. And so I'm glad that you're here. Listen, I want you to do me a favor though before we jump into the word tonight. If this is your first time here, again, let me just say a really great big God bless you. If you're back again, all just the old homies, just the saved seasoned folk. Listen, we're glad that you're here again. Go ahead and make sure that you hit the subscribe button on our page because I don't want you to miss anything that the Lord is doing speaking and beginning to shape into your life. All the folks that's coming on in the room, listen, come on in, come on in. This is all that I ask. Listen, we get on here at Fresh Fire, and we try to make sure that we bring some meaningful meat, some meaningful manna to your life, some meaningful manna into your ministry, into your bosom, into your home, into your household, into whatever the Lord is doing and speaking into your life, and wherever those seeds may manifest in your life through the ministry and the mission and the message of Fresh Fire. So listen, I'm not on here asking for no money, but all I do ask is that, listen, you will share this with somebody. Do that tonight, will you? Do that for me today, will you? This afternoon, this evening, this morning, whenever you catch it, share this with someone else so that as this thing blesses you, allow this thing to grow and bless somebody else. Let's jump in. Wrestling with rejection. Look, we've been in this series for a few weeks now, and what the primary focus has been for us, what we've been able to uncover for our own lives, is that just because we have experienced the thing doesn't mean that we need to embrace that thing. And so just because one has experienced rejection, just because I've experienced rejection, doesn't mean that rejection be the thing that I embrace. It doesn't mean that that needs to be the thing that I grab hold of. In other words, rejection is not your identity. The rejection that you experienced is not your identity. And so what we're talking about tonight's hot topic is ouch versus opportunity. Ouch versus opportunity. The reality is, right, and the truth of the matter is, the moment that we experience rejection, it hurts. It hurts when you are presented with the reality of the thing that you wanted don't want you. That's a ouch piece. That's a hurt piece. And the work that we're doing tonight, the work that we're doing as we're wrestling with rejection now is to not stay in the space of the experience, is to not stay in the space of the ouch, but to move beyond the ouch, to move beyond the rejection, and to now move into the place of opportunity. Ouch versus opportunity, where the enemy wants us to be complacent. The enemy wants us to be consumed. Where the enemy doesn't want you to move from is the ouch. But where God is calling you to in this season is to see the ouch, but move into the opportunity. Is this speaking to anybody tonight? And so what I wanna share tonight are the 6 ways to overcome rejection. The 6 ways to overcome rejection. 6 primary ways for us to overcome rejection. I want to make sure in this season that, listen, we're doing our work. We're clear about who we are. We're clear about who God is, and we're clear about what it is that God has promised us. And so, yes, in life we gonna have some rain. In life, listen, the wind is gonna blow. In life, it's gonna storm. Ouch! But we can't stay there, right? We've got to move from the ouch now to now live in the unfolding and the manifestation of our opportunity. So 6 ways to overcome rejection. Let's dive in. I pray and I hope that we get to all 6. Amen. But let's go ahead. Number one, 6 ways to overcome rejection. The first one is that God reminds us of our true identity. In our rejection, as we allow God to redirect us from the ouch into the space now where we are now seeing the opportunity. Okay. God now reminds us of our true identity. The reality is, listen, because rejection makes you question your worth. Ouch. Rejection makes you question your value. Right? The fact that they didn't want you, the fact that you weren't the preference, the fact that you weren't the number one pick, you weren't the selection, you didn't get tens across the board, right? The rejection now that type of rejection now, it makes you question your worth. It makes you question your value. But now got to be reminded of our true identity, even beyond the ouch, so that we can see the opportunity that comes and that is birthed in and out of the ouch. First John chapter 3 verses 1 puts it like this, right? It says, now see what great love that the Father has lavished on us, so that we may be children of God. And that we may be the sons and daughters. That is who we are. That's what the Bible says. This reason that the world doesn't know it, because the world doesn't know him. And what I love about that in First John, what I love about that in First John, is where it says now that that the Father has lavished us. And so listen, nothing gets lavished that's garbage. Nothing gets lavished that's trash. So we've got to now understand now, in Him do I move and have my being. Why? Because I'm His. And so my identity now isn't attached now to something that's that's beneath me. My identity now is attached to who God says I am. My father now, as I'm a child of God. And so John then goes on to say now that that's who you are. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The world may not be able to see it in its fullness. And in fact, the world just may see it in their fullness, and that might be why they rejected you. But God now reveals and reminds us of our true identity. Number two, I want to give you this as we take a little bit of a deep dive here, because we've talked about this a little bit as we begin rolling out the series early part of this month. And what I want to lift up here as the second way for us to overcome rejection is understanding that although we experience the ouch, yes, it is God's opportunity, because God uses rejection to redirect us. God uses rejection as a form of redirection. Okay? God uses rejection as divine redirection. So listen, watch this. The rejection now is to steer you right. That's what a redirection does. Whenever you've lost your way, whenever you driving and the GPS has to reroute you, it's redirecting you so that you can make it to the place that you set out and are destined to arrive at. I don't want you to miss this, because God uses rejection as divine redirection. Well, where does rejection steer me? When you have been rejected, yes, you experience the ouch. But what God wants to move you to now is the steering or the redirection, which now moves you into the opportunity. So when I say now that where does rejection steer you? Rejection steers you right. Let's go a little bit deeper here. Right where? Rejection steers you right where? Toward the right opportunities. Come on, somebody. Toward the right doors. It steers you toward the right people. It steers you toward the right opportunities. It steers you right toward the things that are in alignment with God's perfect plan for your life. So God uses rejection to redirect us, because redirection steers you right. It steers you right toward everything that God has purposed, right toward everything that God has promised, right toward everything that God has planned for your life. Will you let the rejection be your redirection to steer you where? To steer you right, towards all the right stuff, towards all the right steps, towards all the right people, toward all the right conversations, toward all the right doors, toward all the right opportunities, toward all the right things that God has purposed and perfectly aligned for you to step right into. Rejection, God uses to redirect us. Rejection is the catalyst now that jumpstarts perfection. I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to stand 10 toes down. Rejection is the catalyst that jumpstarts perfection. If now I'm being redirected and steered now in the right direction. The right direction is the mark that I press toward. That mark that I press toward now is a thing that we will never reach on this side of glory, but we strive toward it. That is toward perfection. We want to be as close to God as we can be. We want to be as much like God as we can be. We want to be as free from bondage as we can be. We want to be as spiritually minded as God as we can be. And so the goal now, the strive for us, is to be in human form. What it is that the Spirit of God models for us, right? But I wanna go a little bit deeper here because think about think about it like this. Think about you needing um, you, you have a vehicle. Think about you got a car and you need a battery jump in your car, right? You went in and tried to start it up and the car won't start. You ever experienced that? Man, that's such a huge inconvenience, especially when you got somewhere to be. Oh, one of the worst times. And don't let it be cold outside neither, and the battery is just dead. But you realize now that the battery is dead, and you realize that what you need is a jump. It's not an engine issue. It's not an energy issue. It's not an oil issue. It's not an octane issue. It's not a gas issue. It's not a cylinder issue that you are experiencing. What you are experiencing is a battery issue. You need a jump. And that's the same way that rejection works. It's not that you need a new battery. What you just need now is the jump start to get you moving from where you are to where you need to be. That's what a jump start is. And so every now and then, God allows us to experience rejection. Why? Because rejection is redirection in the right direction toward the right things. And so when we get a little bit leery, when we get a little bit lazy, when we get a little bit lax, when we start procrastinating, when we start allowing things that, listen, we probably don't need to be seeing, when we start allowing things in that we probably don't need to be hearing, we now forget to turn the light on. We now forget to cut the light off, and now we've got a battery issue. And so now we now want to get we become desensitized, and so now our spirit now is not even discerning who and what is for us. We want to be with folk that, listen, really can't don't even have capacity for who got all that God has created you to be. We want to get caught up now in organizations and folks that we gotta beg just to be a part of. Now we need a jump start. So God has to now allow rejection to jumpstart us, to pull us back in action, to pull us back to full capacity for us to be able to operate, because where we've been moving, where we've been coming, where we've been pulling isn't the place where God needed us to be wanting to stick around and stay. So God now needs to jumpstart us. And that's what rejection does. when it when it shows up in your life, when it shows up at your doorstep. That's what rejection does when it's your application that they denied. That's what rejection does when it's your love that don't live here anymore. That's what rejection does when it's your child um, that would rather talk to anybody else because we can't seem to find a connection with you. That's what rejection does. Rejection has a way of showing up, um, not for us to live in the ouch, but for God to uncover and expose the opportunity. Proverbs 16:9 puts it like this: in their hearts, humans plan their course. but the Lord establishes their steps. You stepping right? You stepping through the right doors? You stepping to the right people? You stepping into the right places? Are you stepping into the right path? Are you stepping into the right promise? Ain't that good? Listen, let me give you number three. Number three, we got to keep moving. We got to keep moving. Right? So we've been talking about the 6 ways to overcome rejection. Rejection reveals your true identity. Rejection is God's opportunity for redirection. And number 3, God strengthens you through rejection. God strengthens you through rejection. I'm going to say it again. God strengthens you through rejection. When we experience rejection, I want you to hear me. Hear this. When we experience rejection, one of 2 things occurs. When rejection happens, one of 2 things occurs for us. There's either going to be, when you experience rejection, there's either going to be a shrinking or there's going to be a strengthening. Is that good for somebody? I said, is that good for somebody? Did you hear what I just said? When we experience rejection, one of 2 things will happen for us. We will either experience a shrinking or we will experience a strengthening. One of the 2 is going to happen. Right? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. One of the 2. Either a shrinking or a strengthening. Now, if when rejection happens, we're experiencing a shrinking, that means that what we are experiencing as a result of the rejection is a decrease, is a lessening. For something to be shrinking, there's a reduction. And what happens with many of us when we have experienced rejection is we have attached ourselves to the latter. And what we've done now, is to the former. And what we've done now is we've allowed the rejection that we've experienced to diminish and decrease our value, to diminish and decrease our worth, to diminish and decrease the way we see ourselves, to diminish and decrease the way that we think other people see us now as a result of the thing that we have experienced called rejection. We then think, well, maybe they need a little bit less of me. Maybe my personality, I need to tone it down a little bit. Look, my mama was telling me a story. She went out to dinner with some ladies from the church, and was quite a few ladies, and one, I guess, a little handful of just little old church ladies, and they out after church, and something was said, and my mom just kind of bust out laughing, and I hope she don't kill me for telling this story. And one of the church ladies, just kind of, I guess, like, felt like my mom. Listen, you just having too much fun, sis. Kind of told her, listen, calm down. I guess it wasn't that funny. Listen, that rubbed my mama the wrong way, right? But listen, what we will tend to do as a result of someone else's rejection, as a result of someone else's inadequacy in the way that they see themselves, if we aren't careful, we'll think, you know what? Because my mama could have thought, you know what? It's my laugh. Let me tone me down. I'm like, no, mama, you don't need to tone nothing down. In fact, it ain't that you do too much. The truth of the matter is some folk don't do enough. And so listen, you got to show up in spaces where you, number one, way to overcome rejection, you're clear about your identity. I'm not changing for nobody but the Holy Ghost. Let's keep it all the way a buck. Listen, you're gonna have to take me as I am. Listen, I'm a work in progress, but I'm working on me. I see me. I just need you to see yourself. Don't try to just change me over here. I need you to see you. And so what happens now as a result of experiencing rejection is some of us now we will begin to shrink. Let me not be myself. Let me go and just be on chill. Let me not do too much. Let me not say too much. Let me shrink myself so that maybe I'll never experience rejection again and I will be accepted. But then there's the other hand, on the other hand of experiencing rejection. And it's the counter to shrinking. And the counter to shrinking is strengthening. And strengthening is quite the opposite of shrinking. Because when you are strengthening, there's a growth now that's taking place. And so I said this, listen, when you experience rejection, one of two things will happen. You will either shrink or you will find strength. And to be strengthened now means that, oh, there's a growth that's happening. There's a growth now that's taking place. And not just a growth, but there's a maturation, right? There's a maturity. There's something, listen, that's being groomed, that's being shaped, that's being strengthened in and through this rejection, because rejection is going to do one of two things. It's going to shrink or it's going to strengthen. And so with a strengthening, there's a stretching. With the strengthening, there's a stretching. With the strengthening, there's a stretching. And I need you to hear me tonight, because God will allow the rejection to strengthen you, because God allows rejection to stretch you. Did you hear what I just said? God allows rejection to strengthen you, because God allows rejection to stretch you. And so I just want to ask tonight, listen, where are you being stretched? Because wherever you're being stretched, that is where you're being strengthened. And wherever you're being strengthened, you can look now for the places where you're being stretched. And in this season, I hear God saying that now isn't the time for you to start shrinking, but now is the time for you to start stretching. In my weakness, that is when He is strong. There's a stretching that's taking place. And in fact, James puts it like this in James chapter 1, verses 2-3. James says to consider it pure joy, my siblings, whenever you face trials of any kind, because you've got to know now, for this is the testing which produces your faith, which produces perseverance. It's the testing of your faith which produces perseverance. Let me say that again, right? Consider it pure joy, siblings, whenever you face trials of any kind, because you know that it is the testing of your faith which produces perseverance. It is the testing of your faith which produces perseverance. So out of this rejection that I have experienced, listen tonight, there is something that is produced, because it produces something. It produces perseverance. So out of the rejection, out of the not being approved, out of the not being accepted, out of the not being wanted, out of the rejection, something is being produced. James says to count it all joy. It's producing something. And so, other words, something is developed. What does it mean when something is produced? Something is developed. Something is now birthed. Something now comes into existence when something is produced. And so now there's something is present now in my life that was not present before. Somebody needs to get this. Are you going to shrink or are you going to stretch? Because when you allow God to stretch you as a result of the rejection, there's something now that gets strengthened in your life. There's something now that shows up in your life that wasn't there before. There's something that's able to grow in your life that wasn't there before. There's something that's able to mature in your life that wasn't there before. In other words, I want to leave you with this tonight. Rejection hurts, but it helps more than it hurts. Rejection hurts, but it helps more than it hurts. I've gained something. It produces something. And so I've gained something. And what I've gained, I'm better because of it. What I've gained, I'm stronger because of it. What I've gained, I'm wiser because of it. What I've gained, I'm strengthened because of it. What I've gained, I'm different because of it. What I've gained, I'm elevated because of it. What I've gained, I think differently because of it. What I've gained, I move differently because of it. What I've gained, I handle crisis different because of it. What I've gained, listen, I handle people differently because of it. Will you allow God to move you from the place in your life where you have wrestled with rejection, where you've only been able to see it as an ouch? Will you let God show you how the rejection is more than just an ouch that you've experienced? But on the flip side, there's an opportunity for you to embrace. Listen, we are out of time tonight, and I hate that we are. But listen, we're in this series all month. I'm gonna be looking for you this Sunday at 2 p.m. We'll be streaming live right here, right where you found us. Come on back. Listen, we've got just some great teaching right here at Fresh Fire that I'm excited about. Some great ministers that are fully capable and competent. And I'm glad just to serve in the vineyard. And we will see you Sunday at 2 p.m. And we will see you back here next Tuesday, same time, same place. Love yourself, love somebody else, and set some stuff on